Well, we waited, what was that, 4 weeks? Come back after the Australian Grand Prix, and we were greeted with that pile of garbage. Well done,
Yes.
Baku. Well done.
Well done,
Uh,
Baku, in more ways than one this time.
yes. Yeah, bit of a stinky weekend, unfortunately. Even the sprint couldn't really do anything. I don't even think F2 outside their sprint race couldn't really salvage it because their feature race is pretty smelly as well. So, um, yeah, unfortunately, just a bit of a boring weekend. I think as you mentioned before we started recording, everyone's already talked about, but we're going to talk about it some more.
Yes.
There are a few things to talk about, but we'll probably try and keep it brief because if you watched it, nothing really happened. So, I guess the big thing to talk about, Perez, obviously well done. He gets both wins. He was exceptionally strong this weekend.
Yay!
Yeah, as much as we obviously thought coming in, it's like, it's just going to be Max. And as everyone else thought, it's just going to be Max. Perez will be one step behind, but we always forget how good Perez is at street tracks, and particularly at Baku. He seemed very strong here, like far outpacing Max in both the races for sure. So, but yeah, I want to know your thoughts being the Perez super fan. Although, as we have had pointed out in the last video, where you had the Mexican flag the wrong way around, we have since taken away your super fan license.
Yes, that's fair enough.
So I'm giving you a chance to redeem yourself and get your license back, if you so choose.
Well, I mean, we had the sprint, and he did well there. But it came with a caveat that when you saw the damage on Max's car, you thought, look, down a straight, that's going to have a lot of issues there, right?
Yep.
So, although, yeah, you couldn't clearly say, oh, it looks like Perez has fairly won there, and he kind of, had a good launch and got away, which was fair enough. He had to put himself there in the first place.
True.
But, yeah, it was hard to say definitively, oh, he's got the better of him, right? And you went into the race, and you... of course, Max was starting P2 ahead of Checo, right, as well.
Yep.
And so then they started running off, and then Max got through, and then I think Checo got through also on Charles before that kind of first cycle of pit stops and everything started.
Yep.
And you thought, okay, so what's going to happen? Are they going to stay line astern? Is they just going to help each other around? Is Checo going to try close? And you saw him start to close a little bit, and then we had Debrief have the end to his greatest weekend we've ever seen. Oh boy, please delete our predictions video. Thank you.
He's having a bit of a stinker. I mean,
he's having one.
One little caveat I want to talk about. Obviously, he's just kind of grazed the inside wall there and completely broken the suspension. We saw a little bit
and
later
how many
on.
people did that? He was probably
you saw
so
Stroll,
many people.
You saw Stroll hit it.
Stroll, Checo, Max, Hulkenberg.
well, particularly Stroll, because you saw that, and he's hit that like 4 times harder than De Vries had, and he's like, that's fine, just kept going. It's like how, on one hand, it's obviously it's not ideal. Like, you don't want to be hitting the wall, particularly in a race. That's where you get problems, where you break the suspension, you're out of the race. But man, that's unlucky. After looking at Stroll's one, you think, how is it fair that Stroll gets away with it and De Vries is now out of the race? But apparently that's just the way
it's how the cookie crumbles. It's how Baku bites. We've seen a few of them. Hulk's always had bad luck there. He crashed out 2 years in a row, I think, near the end, doing the same thing. So that's how it happens. But we had that store it stirred a bit in the strategy pot. Probably the only thing that threw a bit of a coin in the mix as far as that's concerned. So we saw the incident, and Red Bull still had time to tell Max to stay out, because you could kind of tell the car needed to have people on track, and they almost never now will recover a car like that under double yellows unless it's like so far off the track. And even then, we saw what happened in Saudi Arabia in a car that was basically parked as far away as you can, and they called a safety car for it. So if they're going to do that, you thought here to say, well, if you want to be extra safe, keep him out for a lap. But they did box him, and then we thought, well, hey, there's a virtual safety car. And initially I thought, oh, that's fallen into Max's favor. But then I was like, oh, wait, no, that's not how it works. It's when you box under it that it works. And because it was a VSC as well, I think with how it worked out, everyone has to go in the same speed. It's not like the safety car where you can play some kind of games depending on where you are, and like the what do you call it? The delta's like a little funky. Like sometimes cars can kind of race around as long as they're in a safe section. It's a little weird. While VSC is very much, here's your flat delta here's your flat amount you can go over every half a kilometer or something. If you go over in that section, you're done for. So it
Yep.
really does neutralize the race. That's why they added it. And then it was realized going, oh, he's going to come out ahead here. So then it was like, well, he's going to come out ahead. Is Max then just going to catch up? They're both kind of on the same strategy now, same tires. No one's really reporting an issue at this stage. And he kind of didn't. Checo eked out a little gap of a few seconds, which is for how good the slip is there. To be fair, how good the Red Bull is there too in that slip as well.
Yep.
He had that advantage too, and yet he wasn't able to make that final closure. There was no radio message to say, "Oi, coming off here," right? It seemed to be before the race. Christian Horner was saying, "No, look, if they're out there, they want to fight, then we'll just bloody let them have it," right? We know things are tense, but we're not going to try, stop them here.
As much as the reporters, i.e. Ted, was trying to concoct something. Maybe because the race was petering out to be shit.
Yes, he was
trying
to concoct
drama. It's like, nah, shut up, man.
What was his suggestion? He was trying to say they should swap them because they've done Max dirty or something. And he's he was like, aren't they going to engineer it? Almost asking as if the answer was yes, rather than just throwing it out there to go, ooh, wouldn't it be funny if they tried to? Right? He was asking it as if the default go-to should be to engineer something. And everyone else is like, even if they did, I don't know how then Sergio doesn't just quit, because he'd be like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Or Sergio he just wouldn't. He'd just be like, no, I'm okay.
Why?
Yeah. I don't even think he'd I don't even think he'd do that. I think he'd be like, no, I'm winning.
This isn't Abu Dhabi 2021. I'm sorry. This is
yeah.
So yeah, and then they kind of, for better or for worse, came home line astern. There was a few other things going on, which I guess we'll talk about. But as I think it was a genuine performance from him, and they got straight out of the car, and Max is even patting him on the back and saying it was fair effort. He wasn't complaining of something or felt that something was wrong or just like I missed out. He was like, no, that's how the cards fall sometimes, and I couldn't catch him. So it was like, well, good stuff. So. Again, it could just be that there's these 2 or 3 circuits that he's a legend at, and others he's poor at. But things are boding better than we might have hoped so far. So we can hope that
definitely better.
No one else is there.
Yeah, definitely better than last year, with him being a lot closer. And considering at the moment, I think as they alluded to, like, he is basically Max's only contender.
Yes,
and quite possibly will be his only contender towards all season. The fact that he is taking his opportunity when he is quick, more so than last year, is like last year, and I think even previous years, the only opportunities he's had to take his chances when Max has had damage, or he's fallen out of the race, or he's had bad strategy, that's dropped him way to the back,
or takes a penalty or something.
Yeah,
in the street
exactly.
Track, and
it's like then it's like, oh, then Perez capitalizes. But this was, granted, it was. He did get helped slightly by that safety car, but even before that, he was closing, and I think there was a very good chance he could have overtaken Max on merit in that first stint. And he pulled the gap to Max in that second stint, so he was quicker. He just was.
Yep.
And I think that's fair play, and I think if he can keep that up with the amount of street circuits we have this year in particular, if he can do that across all street circuits, or at least majority of them, he is in a very, very good position to fight for the world championship. It's pretty crazy to think about, but I'm here for it if it happens, for sure. So,
yes.
Yeah.
At least to keep it a bit interesting, and in those races where if Red Bull is strong, it's not just default 1-2, right? There could be a little more there, potential for some tension. And I think going into this weekend, one thing I heard on, it might have been Checkered Flag, was to say that, look, if Checo's being realistic about saying this is my title to actually go for, he basically had to double back-to-back win here to have a chance of that. And it looks like he's just gone, sure, well then I'll do it. Everyone's like, okay, we might have before this round be going, sure, we'll see when it happens. And then it happens, you go, okay, I'm not going to, there's still, 80-20 odds maybe, let's say, 90-10, I'm going to be realistic. But it's more realistic if it, there's a trend. So, so as I say, my unbiased view, I think, is to say,
screw that. Let the bias out. Let it out. You need that. You need that badge back, bro.
Yes, my bias badge. yes. But it is a shame that the Ferraris and Leclerc in particular couldn't hold off more. I think credit that the 1 lap pace and that. I mean, they said it in the commentary. Over 1 lap, he seems to still be like really good when the car's in his hands and he can go full power. He can pull out great laps. But yeah, over a race, you just saw that he just had no way to defend, and any kind of track that has a straight where you're going to get more than 10 seconds on full throttle. If Red Bull's behind you, I'm sorry, it's just it's not going to happen. So
yeah, in saying that, he did get that P2 in the sprint, Leclerc. So there was that's what I was finding a little bit odd, is that I don't know how much damage Max had, but like Max couldn't fight. He could sort of keep close to the back.
He got up to him, but then he got stuck.
Never really,
and even when Charles started to drop off quite dramatically, which alluded a bit to kind of the tyre strategy that we were going to see for the race. Max couldn't really get by him, and again, it could just be that maybe he also overheated his tyres, so there was just no grip out there in the dirty air, or it could be just that gaping hole was just, mitigating every advantage they have down the straight. But it still gave us some hope into the race, which unfortunately didn't materialize. But it did. I think maybe nice that we had the sprint, because that wasn't so bad, and I guess when we're done reviewing the race, maybe we can talk about our thoughts on the sprint.
Yeah, that's definitely, we'll have to talk about that, because I think we had, even when we were talking, I think we had some pretty conflicting thoughts on the whole format. So, I guess on the race, we obviously want to go back a little bit. We could talk about Ferrari and Aston and Mercedes. They were sort of about where we expected them to be. Yeah. Aston I think Fernando did still quite well to get that P4. They were a little slower on the straights, but definitely not as slow as maybe we anticipated. But I want to look further back, because that's, I think, where a little bit more interesting stuff happened, particularly with Ocon and Hulkenberg, both starting from the pit lane. And they went pretty much the entire race on one set of hard tyres, just praying for a safety car at the end.
In fact, one of them basically went the whole distance of the race when the race was wrapping up even.
In fact, yeah, we could talk about that. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the shit show that was. Yeah.
We need a card that pops up in now we talk about FIA shittery.
Yeah, that was bad, wasn't it? That was just bad. It's almost like what happened at the Australian Grand Prix. You know how they let them out of the track, even though it was technically the last lap, and the marshals let them all out onto the track, even though cars still had to come back around for one more lap. This was even worse, because it was still a racing lap, and one still had to pit, and they were all covered the pit lane. I don't know how someone didn't get hit there. It looked very, very close.
Yes.
I guess this is why they have the pit speed limiters as well. I mean, you can't predict something like this, but if they didn't have those pit speeds like they didn't used to have in the old days, then someone could have got very, very hurt there. So,
but the thing is, this has happened before, exactly the same. When we had Albon in 2020. Was it 1 or 22? I think
did it happen then as well? Year. I didn't notice it then.
Yeah, because he went all the way to the race and pitted on the last lap and ended up getting points just. And he coming out at the end, there was people kind of on the right side of the pit lane all walking around that were getting pushed back by marshals and that, because of the similar thing.
Okay.
It wasn't made as big of a deal, I think, just because it looked less shocking, and I guess because everyone was near the end, and he because it was the reverse around, where here the end of the pit lane was like the start where he first came in, while in the inverse in Australia, everyone was near the other side towards the exit. So when they saw everyone coming in, they could say, get out the way. So
gotcha.
And it's strange, because they did review it, and as I thought they might say, is that this is often what they do in kind of like the end of the last lap. They get people out there because they're setting up for the cars to come in. They're getting all the cameramen out there, so then when everyone pulls in, they're all there ready to go. So it feels like they've always done it towards the end of that last lap, and just with how the cars were placed on the track, I guess Max and Cohen, the leaders, went too far behind him in a way. Like with Albon, I know it was closer. When he came out, he was kind of coming out just as the leaders were finishing, so it was almost like he was almost there when it was finishing. And they've, as I say, they always try to cut it close. And I don't know why after Melbourne last time they didn't say, look, this is
wait until the checkered flag falls. Yeah,
because this can actually happen where you have someone box right at the end. It's not like they say 2 laps to go. Sorry, pits are closed. If you come in, you're parking it right. If they had a rule to say 1 lap to go, you pit box closed, you have to stop at the end of the pit lane if you're coming in. Sure, then fair enough. If they think they need that time or whatever. But it seems like this is normal process, and it needed for something to happen again for them to go, by the way, this can happen. And it's not like this was like someone had a blowout and was suddenly coming in last minute. Yeah. Everyone knew that he still had to pit, otherwise he's going to get disqualified. Did they just think, he's obviously taking the disqualification? And that's what the commentators were doing, and the global Sky footage. they're all saying, he's still got a pit. What are all these people doing? For like half a lap. They're like, huh? You almost felt like Ted was out there running, like pushing people going, there's still a car coming. This, So it was...
bit farcical. Yeah, you're right though. You're right though. It's like it's disappointing that it now has to have happened twice in the last few years for this now to pop up again as a problem. I do think it could just be something as simple as they need to wait till the checkered flag falls first, because once the checkered flag falls, then they can't come through the pit lane to take their pit stop, because then everyone, even if you've been lapped, that's you're on that lead lap now.
Yeah, you'll be crossing the lap. And,
So I think that's all we have to do is just say pit lane's closed to all of those personnel and media and all that until the checkered flag falls. I think that's all they have to do. It's pretty simple, but it's a bit disappointing that it had to now happen twice and in a much more dramatic fashion the second time round for this, hopefully to have some action.
Yes. And there's 2 points to it. Is one, it's not like it's that ridiculous a scenario to think of that this could happen.
Yep.
So when they're assessing how they do the end, you'd think someone would raise to say, oh, if we're planning to do this half a lap into the last lap, isn't there a chance this could happen, right?
Yeah.
That's the first problem.
Yep.
And then the second is that everyone who was actually watching the race, the officials and everyone, would have known a car still had to box. So unless this was really just... they were putting them out so early that the officials didn't even realize, and they thought, oh, it'll be fine because then they get them when, someone crosses the line and then everyone comes out. I agree there is a bit of a risk, I think, with all the mechanics coming out and rushing to the wall, and there was a bit of concern there, and I agree that's maybe something they haven't nailed down, and I know they're trying to, get people to stop jumping over the fence and that part of that might be an evolution to say, look, no one's allowed out, to run across unsafely until, maybe like a green light goes on to say everyone's across the line now. Pit lane is free use. Go out there, celebrate, and then move out. As the cars come back in. So there's always a concern there. You could have some mechanics running out if the timing is close, as we talked about before. But then just no one from the officials, even all the commentators are for 30, 40 seconds before it was saying, is he not, the first thought was, is he just not pitting? Because pit lane's closed? Is he what? And then you went, no, he's still got time to pit. You went, well, why is everyone here? And even as he was pulling in, though, it's not like everyone there for the last 10 seconds would be going, there's a car, get out the way, get out the way. They were still putting the barrier out, this physical barrier, as he came in.
Yes.
It's like the last minute those people knew. There was no one on the radio, the comms, anywhere. So even if he was 20 seconds away and someone went, oh crap, we've got to do something. You didn't see any of that. So it's like
they had to wait until literally a car was coming through. Hitting
when
them
we as viewers knew 40, 50 seconds before. So even that's what is this communication? Is there no one can talk to anyone down there? What is I mean, it's we can go on about it, but it just if they made a mistake, sure, then someone knows, they go, get out there, move it, we can review it. It's just that it played out as it did. You just go 2, 3, 4 levels of control just failed there. It's
definitely.
It's we can just add we're probably talking more about this in the actual race and sprint, and there was a race and a sprint.
Seriously, welcome to our podcast. We talk more about the FIA shit shows because there just seem to be so many of them. Yes. New podcast. Yeah. I guess. Well, did you want to talk about the sprint then? Because there was a little bit there. I mean, we saw Yuki's tire complete more of the race than Logan Sargent did. So
yes,
that was good. Was that the second time that Yuki went into the wall and ruined that tire? And that side.
Yes. Well, the first time was because he actually whacked it, right? The second time, I saw in a report that he'd had... Because the only footage we saw was when he came through that back straight, and he just didn't turn and went right and smacked the wall.
It looked like
he
must have had some kind of problem.
Yes, and he already looked quite far behind everyone else. And apparently, I didn't see if there was the footage available. It would be, you could find it, but apparently he'd already had contact with his teammate before that. So it was likely he'd had some light damage but was trying to drive through it, and then I guess he tried to turn, maybe something failed, or he just took way too much speed in for the type of damage he had, and then that's when he clonked, and then, it was sayonara, right?
Yeah, gotcha.
So, yes, it was a bit of a stop-start kind of sprint race. But as I say, I guess it kept things a little interesting at the front, and I say the result gave us a little bit of hope for the race. But as it panned out, it was we thought, oh look, the softs will last 3 laps, the mediums last 10 laps. How long will the hards last? Oh, it's 57 laps.
Yeah.
So if they only lasted 20 or 30 laps, then I think you've actually got a bit more strategy there. Even when the safety car came out and everyone boxed, you thought, oh, are they going to make it? And then you looked at, as we said, Hulkenberg and
they were still out there. I think I remember looking at lap 41 or maybe even later. No, because it was like it was like 11 laps. It must be 45, and I'm like, they're still out there on the same set of hard tires, still not being overtaken by people on like 20 laps.
And sure, they were falling back a little bit, but you thought if they've lasted that long, no one else is going to box. No. And then Bottas at the back boxed for mediums, and then he was like falling further behind. And you thought, well, if he was suddenly getting 3 seconds a lap, then everyone goes, let's get on something here, right? But instead, no. So then it turned out to watching, maybe hoping someone would crash for a late-minute safety car, and then Hulkenberg and Ocon luck out, and you go, whoa, what is this? But then they just ended, and then they boxed, and then it was like 3 laps to go. They went on the radio with Gunther Steiner, and they were like, what are you hoping for? He's like, well, we were hoping for a while. We started last. I mean, we tried something here. We learned a bit, but nothing happened. So what are you going to do about it?
It was definitely, I think that was the most disappointing part, I think, of the race, is the fact that those hard tires were just lasted too long. And I think I mentioned this with you as well. It's like, this is I mean, there's kind of a lot to talk about. The fact that overtaking wasn't prevalent as well, and I think a lot of that possibly had to do with the tires. But with these new regulations, it is supposed to make overtaking easier, and with a big long straights with the DRS that they have here, you would think it should be pretty easy. But it turns out it wasn't, so I don't know if there's...
And it's not like everyone was in performance order either. Like, as we say, we had Hulk and Ocon who had, like, 1 car behind them, and then 5 cars behind them, and then half the grid behind them. So it's not like there was no one out there that really you thought should be making a move here. There was tons of cars there, and it only took until Hulk's tires had literally gone off a cliff for people to start passing him, because he literally couldn't turn the thing. He was just drifting around everywhere.
So I think we really need... we can't have tires that last that long. We go back to talk about the turbo hybrid era, where it was like pretty much every race was like a one stop. And if you have been watching since then, some of those one stop races, if not most of them, pretty fucking boring. Not much going on there. You go in, you pit, you come out, the race ends. Awesome. Unless there's a big, you're basically, I don't want to say hoping for it, but you're sort of hoping for a crash or a safety car or something just to spice up the race, because the races, they're just so boring when they're a one stop like this, because there's no strategy involved, because everyone has to go one stop. There's always the same 2 tires. Like, you go the medium and then you go the hard, or you go the soft and you go the medium, and it's like, well, if everyone's doing the same thing, what's the point? Like, we need to have, I think we need tires that degrade a lot more than that, and I think we need tire compounds, maybe not that work slightly differently, but like, you could have... Granted, I know nothing about the tire, how Pirelli does
it's complicated.
It is
even
hard,
when you look at it. We saw the soft and medium, and we thought, there's so much wear here. Even the medium runners were struggling after like a third of the race distance,
if that.
So we're gonna have an amazing race, and then the hard just turned out that you could just elongate it, and I think part of that was it made it really like tough, and then also unraceable. So you got the worst of both worlds almost. A tire that could last forever, and then no one could race on it either. It was like, well, bugger, like it's not even like sometimes the one stop's okay if the 2 stop aggressive can beat it. Like, we've had those great races
like
where
the French
someone 2 stop
time,
someone 2 stops, or the we've had a few times in Hungary where Hamilton was stopped twice and chases down Verstappen, and at least even if it's a slightly boring race, you have like a 15-20 lap period where you're watching a car take out like a chunk each lap on the car ahead, and even something like that,
that's
it's enough to make it like a 3.5 like a 3 out of 5 race, just to have some alternate battling strategy. Well, here it was like, even you thought you could, some of them could go, well, you could box, but like, look at these queues, like, you're just going to get stuck. There's no point. It was only Russell that did, because he had a gap to do it. And then that was, and as I say, Bottas at the back, who even on mediums was then falling off the pace. It was like, well, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
It's just, I know, it's like, some of the tires were seemed like, the perfect great wear, and then the other one was not. So it's not even like the whole tire set is off. But you're right, it's tires. If they could get it right, they've been the tire supplier for how long? They would have done it by now. It's complicated. We could go to next week and go, these tires are amazing without any changes, right? It's tricky unless you make a different tire for every location, for every weather, for every temperature. But it's just a shame because, as we say, we normally come here thinking it's going to be quite exciting, a bit of diversity, a bit of incidents, and it turned out just to be quite safe. And
well, I guess that's like. Maybe I'm going back to the real old school shit here, but like, what happens if we brought back two manufacturers again? Like you bring back tire war stuff, but then you have like Pirelli who have these all three tires aren't like, maybe they're good over one lap on the softs or the mediums, but the hard tires slow and unraceable, but they last a long time, and then the other two compounds just run out immediately. And let's just say Michelin, for example. They get the tire compounds right for this weekend, and then you have these like varying teams with different tires, and let's just say Ferrari, for example, they have the Michelins, and they seem to work really well here. And I feel like that could make it a little more interesting as well. That's obviously unlikely, but I think
it's in the current day of F1. There's far too many politics of that it just wouldn't work, right? It's part of the reason they had to phase it out, because you just had, what was it, like Ferrari controlling the Bridgestones, basically, right? It was one of the two, Bridgestone or Michelin. I don't remember which one they were with, but they were basically partners with them, right? They made the tire for the Ferrari. The other teams that had it just had to go along with it. Well, everyone else went with the others because they weren't biased, right? So yes, it's tricky, as I say. It feels like sometimes they get it right, but that's also racing. That's also F1.
Yeah, sure.
You're sometimes going to have sleepier races. And look, to be honest, there's so much good racing out there this year. If you actually want to watch something else or whatever, I mean, go for it. I saw so many people on Twitter just like, so boring watching WEC now. It's like, that's like, I don't blame you. Like, it's great that there's actually so many great things to watch.
Yeah.
If you found it boring and you want something else, go for it. But it's still just like, you don't need to be petty about it. Like, oh, this is crap, so I'm going to watch something else. It's like, shut up.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, exactly.
I wanted to rant about that. I saw so much of it this weekend. I'm just like,
I saw it even in the group chat in one of the Discord groups talking about it. And it's like, I literally just had to mention, it's like, y'all don't know, like, I know they've only been watching for the last few years. It's like, y'all don't know the shit we had to go through from 2014 through.
You look at the last, 30, 40 races, we've had it pretty good. This is probably the slowest we've had in quite a while. 100%, and sure, everyone gets used to having the exciting stuff, but then, you have a few dull races and then it gets back to something exciting. That's motor racing in general, right? Especially if you're going to have a shorter race, not like an endurance race where there's other factors. So, but
I just wish, because I really like Baku as a track, and the last few years we have had it pretty good. I know it's very reminiscent the first time we were here, but it might just be one of those tracks that is one of those extremes. Sometimes you'll get chaos and confusion and all these crazy things happening, and then other weekends, other years, you'll just have these processions. I think you just sometimes you got to take the good with the bad.
Exactly.
Yeah, hopefully next weekend, because we have got a back-to-back, so maybe Miami will throw up something a bit special this time around.
Miami could be the same as Baku. The first race is kind of sleepy, and the rest are chaotic for 5 or 6 years. Who knows?
Who knows?
We'll have to you have to find out in our preview, which I'm sure we have lots to talk about, right? Everything's changing in Miami, right? They got that fake harbor again. They've got different colored paint for the sea.
There might be things changing. I know because they were talking. We'll talk about it on the preview if they took.
Yes,
that's fine. We're not going to talk about it.
I'm not prepared.
But yeah, I mean, there's a lot more we could have talked about. But if we missed anything, let us know. We can't realistically talk about everything in the time that we have, but if there's anything you in particular you want us to mention, let us know. Let us know. Whoop, there's the cat. There's the other one. I thought you had the black cat in there. What happened?
She's gone.
Oh, okay. Fair enough.
He's come to say his bit.
Yep. But yeah, congratulations to Checo. He's only like 7 points off Max now, which is pretty crazy. Alonso's still in third, but got, I think, Hamilton right behind him as well. So yeah, it's all pretty close in the drivers right now, which is, again, just makes it a bit interesting. So, but yeah, let us know what you thought of the race. Keep it somewhat civil, I guess, if you have a comment. We all know
there
it was
was
shit.
plenty you could talk about there with other teams, so we haven't really covered it. Give us your highlight driver that wasn't Sergio, Max, or Leclerc, I guess.
Yeah. Is there any outside of that?
There were some people that did all right. I think Alonso's charge at the end was nice. I think some other drivers had a fairly safe race out there. I don't know.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yuki P10. All right, that's it. That's
oh,
all
yeah,
we've
he
got time
did.
for.
Yeah, okay, that's it. We're done. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for the Miami preview, and we'll go through where we are predictions wise as well there. But stay tuned. Let us know what you think, and we'll talk to you very, very soon. Bye bye.
Laters.